All right, if it's Tuesday, that means it's time for Comic Book School Live. My name is Buddy Scalera. I'm your host for Comic Book School Live. I am a comic book writer and a longtime industry educator as part of Comic Book School Live. And every week we come here and talk about the topics about the craft and business of making comics. And I know you love when we give art demos and writing demos. Sometimes, though, we really have to dive deeply into some of the issues that are hitting the industry. Hence, tonight we'll be talking about artificial intelligence and what it means for you as a comic book creator, both artists and writers and publishers. Now, a couple weeks ago, we had a guest on, and you were so taken with this guest that we decided to have him back because he's our legal expert and ripper of phone books. Please welcome Kristian Stout. Kristian, welcome back to the show.
Nice to be here.
So, Kristian, you are hugely popular because you are a lawyer and a think tanker, and you're going to explain that to me in a minute. But you're also part of the comic book school community. You've been part of our anthologies. You've been with us over the number of years. So when I say that people said they wanted you to back, I wasn't kidding. People really were like, when are you going to have Kristian back? I'm like, it's whenever he wants to come back.
I appreciate that. I like to think it's because I'm so handsome, but I'll take the other compliments too.
You know what? It's easy to say. We don't even have to say it. But speaking of handsome, I want to welcome a guest that I've known, I didn't realize until he said it, probably close to 25 to 30 years. Please welcome Steve Ellis, comic book artist. Steve, welcome. Now, Steve, you and I have known each other a real long time. You did, I think, one panel with me a long time ago. But but we've been talking about getting you back on the show. And thank you so much for joining. It couldn't be any more short notice, right, Steve?
Well, I had a day. That's good.
It's good. Hold on. There's already comments coming in. I'm by the way, guys, we can see Mike Fasolo is not here. So I'm going to be running everything. So we get a woohoo from Redheaded Ed. Woohoo! Okay. Glenn Gotella, digging the alien T-shirt. Let me see your shirt there. Oh, yeah. Nice. Well done. This is the return of the Swole lawyer. What is Swole?
Holy crap.
That's Swole.
That's Swole? Those aren't real, Steve.
No, that's all CGI.
Yeah, he really drew those.
Yeah.
AI, right?
AI. I hear he can bench 500 pounds. That's right. Blank stare. That's create. And then swole. Is swole muscle?
Swole lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, swole means like you're jacked. Like you got muscles popping out.
That's you too, right, Steve?
Not really. Used to be, but not so much anymore. I'm working out again, though, so that's good. Maybe in a few years.
Maybe we could do a special episode where we all work out together and talk about comics while lifting weights.
Let's have a draw off. I think that'll be better.
I have a gym in my house.
Yeah. All right, guys, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to jump in real quick, and we're going to immediately lay the context for the people who are joining. That's right, Redheaded A. We're going to be doing AI, and the people you see on the screen are real human beings who know a lot about the topic. So we're going to get into it. Get your questions ready. My name is Buddy Scalera. You probably know me from some of the comic books that I've written, some of the wizard stuff that I've did, and the photo reference stuff. Kristian Stout. Remember Kristian? Kristian, I was able to pull your photo from last week where you admitted you bench 315 pounds, which is, I would say, half of what you should be by now.
I'm working on it.
You're working on it. Kristian, real quick for context, what does it mean that you're a legal expert or think tank? Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, so I'm a lawyer. I have a JD degree. I don't practice in front of courts. What I do is sort of research and write about emerging topics in law, and the area I specialize in is technology policy. So anything relating to things like telecommunications, artificial intelligence, antitrust law, intellectual property. Me or people that I work with that I manage will come together. We'll research on the topics that are relevant for lawmakers. We'll write reports or amicus briefs, things like that, and we'll submit them in the hopes that people listen to us.
Well, Kristian, I'm listening to you, and I also know that last week people were very entertained. This is indeed part 2 of our multi-part series on getting comic book creators to be better educated about the law and their rights and copyright and all the elements related to AI for tonight. So 2 weeks ago, we had you on to talk about public domain characters and what you can do with them, what you can't do with them. So people should definitely check that out. But I'd like to introduce you, Steve. Steve, welcome to the show. You are an extremely accomplished creator. I was running out of screen space to show all the things. So I actually do have it on a couple of different slides. But tee it up for me, Steve. So and when you tee it up, Steve, can you remember when we met? Because I am at the point where I'm like, when did I meet you, Steve?
Man, it had to have been
was I at Wizard or what was
90s? I think it was when you were at Wizard.
I think so. Was it through Ryan Dunleavy or something?
Wait, what? With No, it was before that because I think I introduced you guys. So
I think maybe you were.
Billy was probably Billy Tucci got us.
Oh, maybe you're right.
Working for Crusade. And I kind of brought along with me a little bit.
All right. Well, you have expanded your credits. You work for Marvel, DC, Blizzard, Wizards of the Coast. You are working just recently, I guess, Moonshine Bigfoot is just hitting the stands now. Is that what we're understanding?
In April it'll be out. It's coming out through Image. Working with Zach Howard. And haven't been more excited about a book in a long time. It's been a great ride working with Zach and the other guys. So.
Now, when you say that you've worked in video games, just contextually, we know what you do as a comic artist. What did you do in video games?
So what I did, at times I've done character development for games. I worked for AMC for a while as a freelancer, but developing some, believe it or not, Breaking Bad and Walking Dead video games that were only online. Mm-hmm. So I designed all the characters, redesigned them so that they could be done. And we made kind of a hybrid comic book game where you would play the comic book about Walking Dead and Breaking Bad. We even did some stuff for Better Call Saul. And then I've done some other things. Like I did a bunch of the illustrations for a game way back in the 90s called Strife, which is like an old first-person shooter Doom game.
Wow.
Pretty much all the artwork for the thing, which was a lot. And then more recently, I was doing some comic book stuff for Cloud Imperium for their Star. Oh God, no, we're gonna be upset at me because I can't remember the name. Star Citizen game.
Oh yeah.
So,
Star Citizen.
So I was doing a Cal Mason comic book for Star Citizen. So, and they're basically in-game cookies that you hunt around and find issues of the comic book.
Oh, that's cool.
Attila wants to know if you're talking about the Telltale game for Walking Dead. Was that what the ones that you worked on?
No, it was actually through AMC, and it was called Walking Dead: Dead Reckoning. And I don't know if you can still find it online. I think maybe if you do the Wayback Machine, you might be able to find it. Because it was one of those things where AMC did it when they were like, it was literally between first and second season of the show. And they just kind of wanted to have a bridge between the seasons, which is why they did the Breaking Bad ones as well. So we did a bunch of little stories about the game was basically you play Shane, and it's the day everything hits the fan, and the sheriff's not there, so you have to basically figure out what's going on. Yeah, it was really, really cool and kind of cruel because we got to play around with people's expectations. Everyone's like, "Oh, I'm going to shoot that guy. He's a zombie," and like, "Oh no, wait, that's actually just an innocent drunk guy." So you have to kind of figure out.
Hard to tell sometimes.
Yeah, well, everyone expects it's a zombie, right? So we were like, let's trick them into thinking everyone's a zombie, and then you have to kind of rethink how you're going to play.
Steve, you played with my heart in this game. Is this what you're saying?
Yes,
you basically created a bunch of PTSD in people.
Probably, yeah.
All right, fun. Steve, because I couldn't fit it all on, I'm going to ask you to just tell me what we're looking at.
Oh, okay.
What are we looking at here?
That's a page from Moonshine Bigfoot, which is coming up, which is actually going to be out in April, so it's soliciting right now.
So, and Steve, these are and just to prove a point, these are real human pencils.
Yes,
right?
These are real, actual human pencils. Yeah,
human pencils.
I do pretty much for a little while. Well, I shouldn't say for a little while. For a bunch of years, I did stuff digitally, so I would do it like using Photoshop and basically drawing and painting online on the computer. But then in the last probably 7 or 8 years, I've gotten more and more into just kind of doing it by hand, just as everybody else was. I mean, I always did it by hand, but now it's like almost exclusively by hand unless I'm doing like computer coloring for a comic.
I would imagine it depends on what the needs, the time, whatever it calls for, right?
It's funny because like if you'd asked me years ago and like the going trend of what people say is it's faster to do it digitally, and I would agree with like computer coloring, but I don't think it speeds me up drawing. If anything, it slows me down.
Yeah, I could imagine that, toggling, figuring out your layers, all things like that.
Yeah.
Looks like you just a couple hours ago or something, you just funded something on Kickstarter, I think, right?
Well, yeah. So this was a Magic the Gathering. I do cards for that game.
Is that a Black Lotus
thing? What?
Is that a Black Lotus?
Well, I did a card called the Luris of the Dream Den. And in the most recent competition not the most recent, but the one over Christmas, the combination of Black Lotus and Luris of the Dream Den was like the killer combination. So I did this as kind of a tribute to that.
I had a question here. Blank Stare asks, do you ink by hand as well, Steve?
Yes, I do. Pretty much. I've done it digitally. And the thing I find about inking digitally is you can zoom in way more than the printing will ever be able to pick up. You end up putting in way too much detail. I'm like, why is that guy who's literally going to print that big? Why does he have a tie, and glasses and an entire life history? Like, there's no need for that. So in a way, it actually speeds me up to be able to say, oh, that's not going to reproduce. I can ignore that or just dash it in instead of sitting there torturing myself trying to like put every detail in everything.
Yeah, I think fellow artist Philip Burnett notes faster is relative with digital, partly because you could redo things way too often.
That's true too. Yeah. Redo is the bane of my existence.
The bane of all right. So here, let me just keep this going because I want to get into the core of it. Steve, this was a video that you were talking about, and really among many topics, you have continued to keep artificial intelligence art at the top of mind for many creators, myself included. Real quick, because there's a whole bunch that I'm going to want you to comment on. They can find this on Facebook. What are you talking about in this particular video?
Well, it's interesting because I didn't realize this until I did some research into it. Apparently, the amount of memory it takes the data center to, where they have the giant data centers, the amount of energy it takes to create 100-word email, I think it was. Like, you tell it, write an email to my boss saying I can't show up to work today. 100 words wastes a bottle of water. So
I don't understand, what does that waste a bottle?
Meaning the amount of water that is used to cool those machines is a bottle of water. So imagine if everybody is, if everyone around the world is sending emails to their boss using AI or getting Google AI or Meta AI or Instagram AI and all of that. Yeah, water is required. I mean, there's entire towns apparently in South America that are fighting with Google to keep their servers out of their towns because basically they're recognizing is that the water shortage is going to hit them in a few years. And their government's like, oh, yeah, we should allow this to happen because they're making money. But then the people are like, wait a minute, we won't have water in 5 years. So, especially when we think about how many data centers are in California and the West Coast, when we just have these giant fires and we have all the fighting over the Colorado River. I guess my thinking about it is, aside from the whole creative side of things where we're kind of strip mining human creativity, the other side is we're also wasting water to do something for the most part we could do ourselves. Like, do you really need AI to choose what to give you an extra answer on Google every time you Google something? And if that wastes a whole bottle of water just to give you that extra Google answer, that AI answer, is that really worth it?
Well, Steve, I'm about to give you a couple bathtubs full of water. So like I told you guys, please note for all of you who are about to have triggers, and Steve, including you, trigger warning, what you're about to see is not necessarily endorsed by Comic Book School. We are taking an academic approach, and also we have our legal expert. So give me a moment as I scroll through these, and then we'll open the discussion. So not too recently, but somewhat recently, there's been artists calling out other artists.
Yeah.
Steve, as a professional artist, I'll be interested in your thoughts on artists looking at other artists' work and identifying AI work based on what they know those artists used to draw like. There has been a recent twist in events where Jim Starlin has said he's going to use AI, and he's going to tell you that he's using AI, and he had some reasoning behind that. There is an explosion of different types of tools. This one really draws in where you go like this. You can really get a good look at this one. Can't draw, no problem. Wow. That one that gives me the feels. This one as well. This is literally a store that sells nothing but comics that were made from AI. And if you look on the right, catalog on the right, looks like traditional art.
Yeah.
Probably because it was informed by traditional art. And then last but certainly not least, Kristian had noted a tweet where he put out the overview on copyright and artificial intelligence, which was recently published by our own government, and then also noted there was an ironic story where an artist who used AI-generated images won an award and then found out that he couldn't copyright his AI image and was not happy about it. So where do we start? I would say we start right about here where artists are calling out artists. Steve, talk to me. Give me your thoughts on well-known artists.
I have mixed feelings about it. I don't know if it's a good idea to be calling people out, just because that leads to just animosity and I've heard. I mean, I kind of kept out of it. I haven't really paid attention to what's been going on with that. But I know there was a story of someone who was accused of using AI, and then it turned out that they were not using AI, and they could prove it. And it just gets to a point where it's like, do we really need to have a witch hunt, or can we just talk about it rationally and have a discussion about it, and maybe say, maybe off on the side say, hey, dude, maybe that's not a good idea.
It felt vaguely McCarthyism to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that happens every time, every time a group is threatened, because that's what you're seeing, right? You're seeing a lot of artists out there who are, we're experiencing the same kind of feeling probably, the guys who were working on a factory line were experiencing when, they were getting replaced by a robot. But I think on the other side is the guy on the factory didn't spend their entire life working towards the goal of working on the factory. You know what I mean? Like their entire heart, soul, energy, everything they had was not put into that job where they had to work every day. And so I think it's even maybe a more existential threat when you start to go, so a lot of artists probably sit there. I mean, I shouldn't even say probably, I know, sit there and look at it as not only is it a threat to your economics, it's a threat to your worth as a human being and everything you've ever worked towards in your life.
All right. Well, so taking the existential part out of this, Kristian, I want to pull you into this. There's two elements that I want to pull you into this. And Steve, and I'm going to have you comment on this as well. You were hired by DC Comics to turn in some piece of art. You turn in the art. Did they break the letter of the contract by turning in art that was AI generated? And if so, right, they turned in the art, they turned in a piece of Wonder Woman and Superman. And then also, second part to this, and I'm going to ask Kristian to go first, and then Steve, I'm going to ask you to go second. Same question. You call out Steve Ellis, and you go, Steve, you used AI art, and Steve's like, no, I didn't. And did you somehow damage Steve's ability to earn money, and can he sue you for that? So, Kristian, you go first, and then Steve, you go second. Hold on. I feel like the market will be the best decider, but that doesn't seem to be a huge demand for that kind of output AI has been producing. Well, I'm not sure that's the case, Philip. But let me give a chance for let me give a chance for you, Kristian. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll just say that I tend to be on Philip's side there. I think before I answer your questions, I think that if you look at a lot of what the AI output is, and I've played with a lot of it, sometimes you get some good stuff out of it. Sometimes a lot of times you get kind of totally unusable stuff out of it. It's very inconsistent. It's not good at creating continuity. I think there's going to be, the impact is going to be on, say, things like low-level marketing. Like you have a blog, you just need a cover image for it. Instead of going to Adobe Stock, you're going to ask ChatGPT to generate like a cover image for you that goes along with your blog post. I don't think it's good enough, and I don't see it ever getting good enough to the point where you're really going to replace artists like Steve or people who are really doing something artistic. Now, they're going to be like one-offs that could be out there, but I don't think on the whole you're going to lose the artist. But that aside, your questions, if you turn in a piece of AI art, so right now, the way stepping back to my tweet, the way the Copyright Office recently made its decision, so it's not binding on courts, but it's very informative to when courts are thinking about this. If you prompt something with an AI, it comes out. If you just release it on its own, there's no copyrightability on it. It's just an AI output. If you take it and you edit it a little bit, you use it as the basis for doing your own inks, or you like erase the background, you put something in. If you put some human creative element into it, it is now copyrightable. So if you're just taking pure AI outputs, I have a feeling that you're going to have a breach of contract, because you're supposed to be able to assign the copyrights in most contracts. You're supposed to be able to assign your intellectual property to the person who's paying you for that work, which means that you're kind of dealing in bad faith. So that's one thing. The other thing would be, I would be surprised if the modern contracts from the big producers didn't have some clause about generative AI in there, at least about disclosure or something. Or if they don't have it now, they will have it very soon. So like, for instance, I was asked to edit, to review like a law journal article. And in the agreement, it says we don't allow the use of generative AI in reviewing it. It was like actually in the agreement when I was going to like do this review. So I would assume that's in there. So if you have a clause that either asks for disclosure or forbids it and you use it, then you would be in breach of contract most likely. And then the second part of your question was defamation, essentially, right? So Steve puts out a piece of art, and Buddy starts saying, you're a piece of crap. Why are you putting out AI art? You're blah, blah, blah. And you're like tarnishing him. That could be seen as a form of defamation. It could be seen as like a tortious interference with contract. That like you're trying to mess up his contracts with like DC and Marvel or Image or whoever he has his contracts with. So theoretically, he would have a basis for it. The hard part comes in when you'll have to prove like damages. But yeah, you theoretically could sue people for doing that, especially if it's malicious.
Well, that's okay. So that's the legal side. Steve, you're an artist. You've been asked to turn in a cover for Superman, and what you turn in is fairly consistent with your style, but there's enough there that it could be called out. But did you turn in the assignment, and is that okay?
Well, okay. Number one, I'm on one of the sites where the list of artists that's been named in being used to have their work scraped.
Oh, so your work was scraped?
Oh yeah, I've been scraped.
I think everybody's work's been scraped, buddy.
What?
Everybody's work's been
scraped.
Yeah.
But there's a list of people whose names have been used actually in like Midjourney and things like that, where people go, I want a piece of artwork that looks like.
Get out. Are you kidding? They literally were like, I want to look like Steve Ellis. And they.
Oh, yeah, because you're right. Like, I want a picture of Catwoman that looks like Jim Lee did it, with the Joker in the background, with inks by Scott. And now I'm blanking on his last name.
Hanna.
But thank you, Scott Hanna. I want it to look like, it was done in the 90s. You can write all these different. I mean, I'm being a little bit more loose with the wording, but you can literally write like 90s style Jim Lee, Scott Hanna, Catwoman, Batman, Joker, whatever.
Right.
And you'll put it in there and it will blend something that resembles Jim Lee with Scott Hanna inks. And this is stuff you could have done a year ago. So now, will the hands be the right?
Turn that work
Scott
in.
Williams. Thank you. It is Scott Williams. Yeah. But is it like, will the hands be the right number of fingers? I don't know. Like, but people are using specific artist names to train it. So it's not just like random, like everybody's work's been scraped. That's true. But like, people are literally going in and saying, I want this to look like that. I want this to look like that.
Yeah, but what's wrong? So what if Steve Ellis, you go in and you say, I'd like to have The Only Living Boy style work by Steve Ellis. Can you AI your own work? Is that okay?
Well, it's interesting because I was talking to someone. Actually, I was talking to Ben Caldwell about this a while ago because there's an artist who I'm not going to name on Instagram who's not a comic artist, but he's a painter, and he basically is purporting that he has his own computer at home, that he does his own that he trains his own AI off his own computer.
Wow.
Now, the reality of this is, from what I understand from talking to Ben and some other computer people, the reality is that no one artist has enough data to inform a computer so as to train it only on your own work. You'd have to be able to fill it with other material.
I don't think that's true, Steve. You could actually.
Is that true? Okay.
Yeah.
This is a year ago. So
yeah. So I've done. So you can do a couple different things. You can do for writing. You can do something called retrieval augmented generation, but you can do like your own fine tuning or create your own what are called LoRa's off of some of the models that you can get on Hugging Face. So there's like a website you can go to, civit.ai. That shows you people that would train. Wow. They would like collect like 10 or 15 images of an artist represented, and then they would basically, it's like a form of fine tuning of the model, and then you can load that LoRa into your diffusion generator, and then actually have it output in that style. So you could do it with your own. In fact, this was one of the points of contention for a movie in the strike, with the writers and with the actors or the filmmakers that happened like 2 years ago, year and a half ago. What movie studios want to do essentially is, some of them at least, they want to take like all of the footage that they have and like train it on their own AIs locally, so that when they go to do like storyboarding or like generating parts for their movies, then the people working on the movies can actually use this as like an assistant rather than hiring like a bunch of low-level grunts to do some of that heavy lifting.
What's interesting about this is, so like the conversation I had wasn't a year ago. Sorry, this was at New York Comic Con, so around that time.
Yeah.
And what we were talking to was maybe old information, but the people I was talking to were saying, like, one of the fears that runs through my head is, okay, I'm Marvel. I own all the comics that Marvel's ever published. What's to stop me from just saying, I'm going to create a comic book as created by Jack Kirby today, informed by all of Jack Kirby's work, and silo it so it's only Jack Kirby, and make a whole Jack Kirby comic. So
that right there, I think that's the cutting edge of where I think these questions are going. Like a lot of the lawsuits right now are on the training side, saying like, oh, who's allowed to ingest it? I actually don't think that's where the future of these discussions is going to be, because like Jack Kirby, Marvel has copyrights to, and DC have copyrights to Jack Kirby actual tangible outputs, but they don't have, as far as I know, they don't have licenses to the Jack Kirby name or any kind of trademarks around that. I personally, and this is just me reading the tea leaves, I think the future is going to be that artists have a stronger set of what are called moral rights. They're very popular in the EU. You see these in California and in some jurisdictions where you actually have more of an economic right to your name and likeness, and the use of, say, like the sound of your voice, your trademark style, like what you can't technically trademark under U.S. law. I think the future is going to be these AI producers actually will bargain with people like Steve Ellis and say, hey, man, every time someone prompts on your name, how would you like a dime? Which doesn't sound like a lot, unless you have a million people.
Millions of people, right.
Yeah. So now if they have a system kind of almost like an ASCAP or BMI for radio, for music, right? Every time a song played on a radio, this agency would collect all the usages, and then they would find the artist and distribute it to the artist. If you have something like that for artists, that could be a major source of income.
It could be, or it could do the same thing that it did for musicians, where basically there's millions and millions of musicians out there and they can't get their work heard because there's
that's not the performing rights problem. That was a different problem.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like there's the inverse side of that is, the recycling of old material, and like you go on Netflix, how much money is any one how much money is any one company on Netflix making off of any one of their shows? It's not. It's Netflix makes the money, and the shows can die on the vine for all they care, as long as someone is watching one of the shows. So if one show does really well, it doesn't matter if 500 shows fail.
So this, hand in hand with this, I personally, and I've thought this for the last 20 years and it hasn't happened yet, so this may not be an accurate prediction. I think the future of being an artist is actually something closer. It's not perfect because there was a lot of abuse in the system, but if you look at like the early 20th century Hollywood studio system, where you look at how A&R worked for record labels in the early 20th century, essentially what these labels and studios would do is they would collect together talent, and they would give them like a fixed salary, and then everybody would be kind of like a resource to work on different projects, right? I think the future is actually something like almost like a return to that, where artists almost form collectives, different kinds of artists, and then they have bargaining power because they have this unique contribution. People want to be associated with some of those artists, but it's almost like like the way a CD would bundle. Like an artist would be like, hey, I know I have 2 hit songs, but I want you to listen to all 12 of these songs because I think they're worth listening to. Now a collective would have the ability to go to these different entities and have bargaining power to say, I know you want Jim Lee and I know you want Todd McFarlane, but you're also going to get these other 20 artists in this deal, and they're going to get a taste of this as well.
Right.
The collective makes sure that the artists are all taken care of at a fair level, and then there's a bargaining power that can happen with these other large organizations.
I mean, that certainly is something, like some of the stuff that, like if you're right and you could train.
I hope I'm right.
I hope you're right. No, I was just saying, if I'm right and I could train the AI on my own work, right, and only I can silo it, right? I can 100% silo it.
Yeah.
That everything's mine.
Yes.
And then I go in and touch it up. Because if I remember correctly from the law, even if I did silo it and it was all based on my work,
you need to touch
then it's not considered copyrightable because it wasn't created by you, right?
We would have to see cases on it. I wouldn't be surprised if it was something as simple as like, oh, you just cleaned up a couple lines, you changed the color.
Okay.
Like I have a feeling it's going to be like a de minimis contribution.
But so Steve, just back to the question though. You're an artist. You turned in those pages. What if we go back over here? You turn in pages to DC Comics. No one knows. Did you still turn in the work? And is it?
Well, it does come down to, I think what Kristian said is in all the contracts that I sign, it says, I'm going to get the legalese wrong, but it's essentially I have full ownership of what I've created, that I can then pass that ownership over to the person who's paying me.
Yeah.
So in a work for hire contract, I have to be able to state that I created what I created, right, and I own the copyright. And when I sign that paperwork, I am handing that copyright over to DC Comics.
Right. If you were paid for it, I have a feeling a court, even if it's not explicitly in the contract, where they say that like you definitely created it, the fact that there's going to be something where you have to assign rights implies that you in fact have those rights. And if under existing law you don't have those rights, you're dealing in bad faith under that contract.
Yeah. So if I was to use AI right now to make a piece of art, technically, whatever part of that art I did that was not AI is not copyrightable, right?
Yeah, if the AI just spits it out, again, even with your hypo, where it was like, well, let's say we got it trained up on just your art. If you didn't do anything with it and you turned it in, technically that would not be copyrightable. Now, someone would have to know that in order to say it.
They'd have to be able to call you out on it, right? So this is where the witch hunt comes in, right?
Right.
People looking over each other's shoulders because they're afraid someone's going to, point out that they used AI.
And the big fear, I would imagine, Steve, is not the onesies, but it's the top talent of Jim Starlin saying, maybe, and I don't know Starlin's scenario. Maybe he doesn't draw the way he used to, but is going to use his old art for reference to tell new stories. What are you going to do about that? Are you going to call out Starlin?
It does get to the point, right, where you wonder, Jim Starlin's if Jim Starlin, I would like to know what he's thinking because I don't know.
Yeah.
But I imagine if for instance, like you said, I can't draw anymore. Let's say, you know, I break both my hands and forever. I'm never going to be able to draw again, but I can, you know, AI my own work and keep continuing making new stories. As long as I'm not taking from other people, I imagine that's, you know, on the edge of okay.
I think it's on the edge. What I don't think is on the edge, and you know, I see this, which is literally, it says, you know, let's zoom in on this again. I can't magnify.
Can't draw, no problem.
Can't draw, no problem. And they're literally using Spider-Man, and that art looks suspiciously like, you know, maybe someone that we've seen. I don't know who that looks like, but it kind of looks like Bagley art, you know. Yeah, you know, and then you have this other one where you literally have celebrities represented, if they are celebrities, and then right here, a literal store. And Steve, not to get you rankled up, but I'm here to get you rankled up. And Elf Witch could be something that you would create. I mean, that is literally in your zone.
It's literally the Green Goblin, though.
But that's going to come down to one of the things.
Yes, it is the Green Goblin.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But like, that's also going to come down to one of these things. Like, you know, everyone complains. Everyone's always complaining about how, like, say, Hollywood never comes up with new ideas.
Right.
Yeah.
Or Marvel is just retreading the same old thing that they've always done, right? You've heard that complaint forever, right?
Right.
And to a certain degree, what that is that's, you know, corporate control telling the creatives that they can't go too far because of economic reasons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't want to risk too much money on this or whatever. So what happens is you end up with, not always, but you often end up with with material that's kind of milk toasty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not really very good, not really very exciting, not really very creative, because you've hamstrung the creators from doing anything good, and you've got someone above who's not creative basically saying, do this, right? And I don't know these books at all, but the very potential here is that someone who has never learned how to write, never learned how to draw, doesn't have any taste or understanding of what the craft is, and can just, like, you know, bang out something using AI, it's probably going to be something that feels like a rerun of something we've already seen a million times.
Right.
You know what I mean?
The nice
thing, any new spark in it, you know?
But the nice thing about, so this bookstore on its face kind of offends my soul in a way, right? But if you think about it, it's kind of an interesting opportunity where it, you know, they're probably going to be cheap. They're going to cost like 50 cents or $1 something, right?
It says it's free. It says
they're free. Okay.
Yeah, so right here, they're free.
Imagine it actually has a market, and there's a bunch of kids who are like, oh, I'm going to download these free books and read them. First off, kids reading books is an effing win if you have kids, and you understand that, right?
I have kids, and I know.
But so this could function as almost like a gateway drug, to a sense where they read a couple of them, and after 2 or 3 of those, I guarantee you anyone with a functioning brain is going to be like, oh, this is not very good. This is not worth reading. And then they're going to have the taste, though, for possibly getting the more worthwhile things that humans
or they go the other direction, and you see it all the time, especially with boys in our country, where they just stop reading altogether.
Well, that's because video games
there's nothing in this world for me. I'm out.
I think that's because video games offer more entertainment value for boys right now than a lot of media, from just observing my son and his friends.
Sure. But then it's just a matter of what time spent, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, we look at this. This is a world that made 20 Transformers movies. The area that concerns me about this, and just as a creator worries me, is that the barrier is so low, and that they are now potentially going to flood the market. And someone's first experience with a comic book might be a good comic book, but there's plenty of comic books that are made by hand that aren't very good as well. Right. You walk up and down Artist Alley. This is not an arbiter of it. Is it good quality or not? It's just more and faster. But the speed at which you can generate this, you say it offends you. It terrifies me as a writer, because I work really hard on my scripts,
Yeah.
and they're not even that good. You
But
know what I mean?
I'm really interested to read one to see if, comics are not as well trod as writing is. You know what I mean? Like words are everywhere. The entire internet is, words, right?
Right.
But we don't the language of comics that make, one panel to the next to the next to the next actually requires someone to sit down and say, this has to follow that image. And we can jump this. We can go from, Sunday at the X-Mansion, morning at the X-Men mansion. In the next panel, it's night and Wolverine's walking out of the house.
Yeah.
Right. And there's giant jumps in there that we have to make logically between those two as readers and as writers. And that might be something that is going to require someone to sit there with their AI images and paste them together. And if they don't even have that skill, because they're just hoping that the computer's going to do it for them, they're going to have these comics that are just going to be like
nonsense.
Let me ask you a challenge question, Steve Ellis. Let me ask you a challenge question. You know where this is going. Who's your favorite artist? Ditko, Kirby. Give me your favorite.
Oh my God, the list. Let's say John Buscema for today.
Okay, Buscema's not going to be draw your comic book, but you're able to, as an artist, think about a page layout, and you and Fred were yourself. You just write it, and you're like, I'm going to write this. I'm going to do a 22-page, and you have images broken out into 6 to 8 panels, splash page, and you're like, I want this to look like John Buscema drew it and Alfredo Alcala inked it, and I'm going to make enough changes that it passes the Kristian Stout test. Is it tempting to you?
No.
Why not? Tell me why not.
Oh,
and then
I just like drawing. I like making it. I like the physical, that's why I don't like doing digital work, right? Like I like the physical feel of pencil on paper. I like the movement that I can get, and also like, I teach a lot of students at Syracuse. I teach drawing, right? And one of the things that I'm always talking to them about it is that drawing is a way of understanding the world. It's not just making marks. It's actually looking out there, figuring out how the world works, and then being able to put it down onto 2-dimensional paper and still be able to convey what you saw through your head onto paper to someone else that they understand. Yeah. Right. And so you have to go through some serious mental gymnastics in order to do that. And then you're going to add telling a story on top of that.
Well, and there was a comment earlier, and I think this is, it says, Craig Peters says, when the human brain creates its chemical structure, dopamine, serotonin, etc., stimulates, pleases, and keeps the brain healthy, artists won't stop making art ever. The act of creation is a drug. Is that part of what you're thinking, Steve?
Part of it.
It's sort of a dopamine release.
It's also like, I think it's also, it's like words. When we're having a conversation, we're speaking together, right? If I'm drawing a picture, we're speaking together. We're having a conversation. And maybe it may only be a one-way conversation, but it could be a two-way conversation. I could draw a picture. You could look at it and say, that's weird. Why is his head looking that way, right? And you could ask me, and I could say, well, I was thinking this. And they're like, oh, okay, now I get it. Or that doesn't make any sense, or whatever. But we can have a whole, interactive conversation with the art. And like, there's conversation to be had about which color blue you choose. I mean, believe me, I do color theory. The color blue is a lot of different colors, and which color blue you choose for a scene can make, contextual differences to the story, right? So there's all these things that you have to think about in order to do it well. And the thing is that I think the AI stuff is kind of going to be lowest common denominator. Yeah.
All right. So Kristian, what about you? So I'm going to pose the same question to you. Your favorite artist?
Let's go with Steve Ellis.
All right. Steve Ellis, same scenario. You want Steve Ellis to draw a comic that you wrote, Steve's unavailable, or just not interested. You go into Mid-Journey. Are you tempted? Is it, if you know that you could do the gymnastics of getting it?
So I can give you.
Are you tempted?
Yeah, I'll give you a similar hypothetical for music, because I have used AI for music. So like, I'll work on a song, and I'll get to a point where like I know what I want everything to be, but like the bridge I'm not happy with, right? So I actually will upload my song to an AI and say, I need ideas for X, Y, and Z. And then I'll listen to like 10 of them. I won't ever use anything it gives me, but I'll be like, oh, that key change there, that's kind of cool. And then I'll go back to my guitar, my keyboard, and then I'll play with the key change that it kind of gave me the idea for. And then it'll take me like hours of playing with these ideas, but I'll come out with something different and useful where I had a roadblock.
It's interesting. I just recently had a conversation with someone about that very thing. The thing that I get excited about is the collaboration.
Yeah.
Right. So if I was to do it and I was to do a drawing and I showed it to Buddy or to someone and they said, well, that doesn't really work. I'm like, well, why? And they say, well, maybe if it's another artist, they might say, well, try drawing it like this. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm not going to use what they drew.
Right.
But what that also did was it connected me to another human being.
Yeah.
And now we're having, a conversation.
Right. That's always better.
Level, right?
Yeah.
What the AI is doing for you, Kristian, is essentially becoming your music,
like a sounding board. Right.
Right. But it's your music buddy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it can't drink beer. And so
Right.
you only have to buy one beer for yourself, right?
Yes.
But like, wouldn't it be, I guess in my mind, wouldn't it be more fun to have an actual music buddy?
100%. I
Right?
agree. But so,
probably better too.
Right. So to answer that two different ways, to answer buddies, like I would never take the song that it comes out of the AI and just upload that to Spotify and be like, oh, look, I have a song. That is not what I'm trying to do. Like there's no point. I wouldn't even open the software to do anything if that's what I was going to do. I would rather go watch Deep Space Nine for an hour. But then to your point, Steve, yes, it like I prefer when I work with actual musicians, but like sometimes it's like midnight. Yeah. I'm working on something and I'm like, that's why I want something. It's interesting to hear variations to just get me out of the way I'm thinking about things. So like I might do something similar on like a comic book where maybe let's say for argument's sake that I was really interested in an issue Steve did. And I was like, oh, I'd really like to do a page like this. And I asked AI for like examples of what Steve might have done. I would look at it and see what ideas it has, but then I would ultimately go and draw my own or, as best I could. I wouldn't use the output.
About that is, especially when I was a younger artist, what I would do is I would go, all right, I need to figure out how to do this panel progression. I don't know how to do it. How would, Bernie Wrightson do it? So I'd pull out a book of Bernie Wrightson and I'd rifle through it and I'd go, okay, that's kind of cool. Or, that's interesting. And I'd rifle through a bunch and maybe I'd pick up a couple different artists and I'd look and, okay, that's what they're doing. But I'm not going to rip off those guys, but I'm learning as I'm going. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a really cool shot. Maybe I could do something similar to that shot, right?
Right. Like I literally did something with the Max with that recently, like a year ago, where I was like, oh, I really love Sam Keith, and I'd like to understand what he's doing. And I actually went through it. I just sketched out each panel he did, and I played around with it. I didn't use it for anything, but it like was useful to see what he's doing and think about it myself. So to me, that's what AI is, the kind of tool that it's really useful for doing that rapidly.
All right, so Steve, respond to what Redheaded Ed notes here. I should note Redheaded Ed is an illustrator, primarily an animator.
Oh, in what?
An animator.
Oh, wow, cool. So let's see. If it becomes how you use the tool and not becoming depending on it, maybe. I mean, I think to some degree, if you can use it to spark your imagination, but I mean. I actually, so I was messing around with designs for a project that I'm working on, and what a friend of mine's like, well, you could use Midjourney and just do this and that, and you'd find some stuff, right? And I played around with it for a little bit, and I realized that what I was getting was just abstract shapes, and I could do that with just the abstract shapes were interesting, and I was like, okay, these abstract shapes might inform the design. But then I sat down and I was like, well, wait a minute. I could just sit down with my watercolor, throw some water down, splash some paint around, and make some cool abstract shapes, right? That will teach me. And not only will it teach me what to look for, but it's also teaches me how to do it, right? So I'm learning as I'm going, and I'm discovering stuff. Like I forget the name of this artist. If you ever watch Proco videos, he has Proco's a Stan Prokopenko, I think it is.
Yeah, great stuff.
He has some really great content about drawing, and he has this one artist on who's an older guy, and I can't remember his name. he worked with Mobius, he worked with Kirby, he worked with a bunch of names that you'd be like, holy crap, why do I not know who this guy is? Because he worked on the animation side, so he doesn't have the comics name out of it, I think. But one of the things he talked about is how, like, if you looked at how Mobius and Kirby started their drawings, it was literally by having a pencil and just making shapes and seeing what appears. And then when they find out what's appearing in it, you start to go, oh, I'm going to tweak this and I'm going to tweak that, almost like you're sculpting something. Maybe, yeah, Marshall, I think that is right. You're almost like you're taking a piece of clay and you're adding clay to it and you're taking clay away from it, and it becomes a new form as it goes. And then you start to go, oh, wait, that's a hand, and that's a face, and that's an arm, and that's a leg, and oh, wait, there's a whole body over here, and that's a mountain, and that's a this. And it's a really, like, there's a journey that you can go on when you're making it. Rudy Nebra's, if you look at his work, right, think of all the weird, gloopy, kind of crazy shapes. That didn't come from him probably consciously designing it. That came from him kind of just going, see where these shapes take me, right? But if you don't go on that journey, what you're going to end up with is going to be kind of stilted and not figured out, like, yeah. I don't know how to describe it, right?
Well, like if you ever watch videos of Kim Jong-gi, when he would just do his illustration, he would start here and then go all the way over here. Like, how the hell does that guy do that? It's a discovery.
All right. So as we're getting close to the top of the hour, I want to start to summarize this. I'm going to start with you, Kristian. Where is the law on AI, and how much is the law keeping up with AI? You're part of think tanks. And how can it possibly keep up with AI literally changing daily? So I know that was like a compound question, but I guess you know where I'm going.
Well, I mean, the law right now, in the United States, at least, we don't have any regulations or laws that would present like an overarching regulatory framework or an easy legal question. There's a lot of cases pending mostly on the training side, what these companies are allowed to use in order to train their systems. As far as I'm aware, we don't have. There might be like a couple of cases on that output side that we were talking about where can I use Steve Ellis as a prompt to get art out of it? I think there might be a couple. The law's a little uninformed there. There are efforts to regulate it all the way from sort of very light touch. If it's obviously doing something wrong, we want to make sure that doesn't happen. All the way over to California, there was a bill proposed last week that would essentially make AI completely illegal. So there's all different kinds of efforts on this. What was the second part of your question?
What can the law even do?
Oh,
because this is literally, you're talking about a case. Case could take months, but we just found out about that new AI from China last week.
Yeah. Well, technically it was a month ago. Everybody just started paying attention to it a week ago. But
okay.
Your point is taken. What can the law do? So the law can deal, and this is kind of like the flavor of a lot of my comments when I submit these to different bodies, is the law can deal with actual harms as they arise. So just because it's AI doesn't make it different to commit fraud or to steal intellectual property or to rip people off, whatever it is. It's just a different tool for doing it. The problems that are unique are, one, scale. So now like fraudsters have a good tool to help them. Like, apparently there's like an uptick of like Ukrainian and Indian call centers that normally you would know they were not from the United States when they would call your grandma. Now they can use like cloned AI voices to kind of sound more realistic. They can get better scripts. So it's a little easier. So you have to be sensitive for things like that. Again, the law can take care of that. It's just at scale that gets harder. And then the other thing is, trying to just detect problems with things like copyright infringement, or as we go forward, what to do about this, like name, likeness, and image, how to protect those things. Those are solvable problems for the law. Especially on the copyright infringement. I think that there can be cases on that now. We still have to see how those come out. I think ultimately we're going to see laws from Congress and states that try to protect artistic outputs in order to make sure that artists aren't being left behind in this as well.
And then Steve, I'm going to go to you, but I think Steve, you made an earlier point where, your contracts have already changed. You re-signed contracts to promise I'm not using artificial intelligence, right? So like if you did something for WotC, you're not going to be able to do that in AI, or you're going to lose the rights. So Steve, looking forward, from where we are now, where do you see this going? Part one. Part two, advice for creators.
Well, where do I see it going? That's really well, okay. So where do I see it going? To some degree, artists are going to have to prove their credentials. And I guess what I mean by that is, going to a convention, right? You can bring in all the printed matter you want. You can bring your you can do stuff on the computer or whatever. But at a certain point, the other artists are going to be looking at you. Can you really draw? I think that's going to be and even the readers and same with, can you really write? Like they're going to be looking at you maybe with a little bit more of a suspicious eye. Like, well, can you really do what you claim to be able to do? And are you a fraud? And, and sometimes the proof is probably going to come out in the pudding, right? Like is the work going to be as good as something that someone actually put their heart and soul into? I think Kristian said it before. I don't think it will be if it's completely AI. I think, if the one thing I think is the big issue right now is I'm not as worried about the older artists as I am about the new artists, because, when I got started, I worked for, I got lucky enough to work for Marvel and DC at certain points, but I worked for a heck of a lot of, fly-by-night comic book companies, kept me alive, right? Kept me learning, kept me getting better, kept me developing my skills, but also developing my eye and my taste so that I could have my own style. And if we take that away from the younger people because those opportunities don't exist, because those fly-by-night companies now jump in with AI, we now have a whole group of people that never get to become experts.
That is a good point.
The whole thing start to fall apart. I don't know.
And here's my worry, Steve and Kristian. My worry is that the AI becomes better writer than me. I mean,
nobody's going to be a better writer than you, Buddy.
I don't think so.
But my worry is that it could happen, and that the crutch that they have is this combined smashed knowledge of great writers and then somebody who's good prompting. Like, it's not going to do it by itself. It's going to be done with prompting for sure. Maybe somebody's a better prompter than me.
Pretty facile prompting, though.
I am legitimately worried of losing work to people who are better at prompting with AI that's a better writer than me.
Sorry. I was
going to say I've worked with AI a lot in like my work, because I have it actually helped me do some stuff, and it is not a good writer. It is facile in a lot of ways. Even I have very expensive AI accounts, and it's good as a sounding board. When it comes to getting the output, it's usually got a lot of holes in it, and there's no insight. It's just predicting text.
Yes, but you would have to agree, Kristian, and Steve as well. You'd have to agree. Maybe you don't have to agree, but you would have to consider that today, this is the dumbest AI will ever be. It will only get smarter. It will only get more.
It depends what you mean by smarter. So it might be better at reasoning. Ask it to tell you a joke. It's still no better at telling you a joke than it was
today. But right. Go to 24 and drive the first Model T, and it doesn't compare to.
So why? But actually, I think Kristian made a really, really good point.
Go ahead.
And I'm going to really heady for a second. You ever read Stranger in a Strange Land?
That one of the best books ever.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. So remember what he said was the basis of humor was human pain.
That's true. Yeah.
Right? Like, we laugh at the guy who falls down, down the stairs because we've all fallen down the stairs and it's a joke, right? Or we laugh at the characters embarrassing themselves because we've all embarrassed ourselves, and and we relate to that internally, right? We're scared at a horror movie because we have been in those moments. And I don't know if AI, because it doesn't have those.
It doesn't have a subjective experience. So
yeah, it doesn't have those experiences. It can't understand how to put them into the right order and the right, Transformers 24.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be able to feel the way.
All it can be right now, and I think for the foreseeable future, all the people that are working on it, they claim the AGI is coming, but I think they've moved the goalposts on what AGI actually means, in my opinion. It does not have any true understanding, to Steve's point. It doesn't have any subjective experience, so all it can be is a simulacrum of human experience.
All right, so I'm gonna split the hair right now. Think of, in your mind, what might be the greatest comic ever written, and I'm gonna say perhaps The Watchmen was the pinnacle of maybe the greatest comic book deconstructionist story. I don't think AI will write The Watchmen, but I think it could write a monthly comic.
It depends on how
it's prompting. I don't mean it will do it by itself, but I do think it could write a competent monthly.
There will be scripts it can write. Yeah. They're not going to be the best scripts in the world.
But neither are the most monthly books.
Right, but maybe. But okay, here's me being positive about it.
Go ahead.
Okay, what that might do is push us as creators.
That's a good point.
To make better work.
Yeah.
Right now we go, okay, well, if we have to compete with, like, if we know that Marvel could just replace us with a middle of the road story this month, then we have to deliver a really freaking good story.
Hold on, let me get that applause thing going. Hold on, let me just.
That's a great point.
Hopefully that's,
I can't think, Steve. I can't think of a better way to end it, because it is the top of the hour, and at the end of the show, Steve, we always ask our guests the same question, and I will repeat the question for you, because I'll be asking you for one piece of advice that you wish you had received earlier in your career. So let me just tee this up for a second, and then we will ask this question. And I have to put you over here in the top corner, and then I have to do this. Okay, and then I'm going to do that. Okay, Steve Ellis. Steve, what is one piece of advice that you wish you had received earlier in your career?
This is something, it's not a meritocracy. So what I mean by that is that not all the extra hard work is going to be understood or seen by everyone else. And sometimes they're going to sit there and go, how did that project become the #1 project when they barely did anything? So, and you put your heart and life and your blood into something, and you watched that, your book go like this and their book go like that. And you're just like, I don't understand what I was missing or whatever. So I guess it's like, don't look at other people's art as a ladder of where you should be in your career. Like, don't look at other people's careers or their successes or failures as a, benchmark for yourself.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
So thank you both, Kristian and Steve. You guys are good friends of the show. We absolutely appreciate you taking the time to speak about this. Steve, they can find you on your website.
Yeah.
You're very active on Facebook, right? I know.
I usually post to Instagram and then it pops over to Facebook. But yeah, I have Instagram and Facebook, and I'm trying to get into Blue Sky more. For the lack of algorithm kind of, natural searching going on.
I tagged you on Blue Sky, and I have like 3 followers, and you had 3,000. So you accelerated the show. So thank you for bringing your audience. Kristian, thank you as always for bringing your insightful observations. And also remember, guys, Kristian's also a comic book writer and artist. We only talked to him about the legal stuff. Oh, he gives the handshake, but he's contributed to our anthologies multiple times. We do appreciate it. I can see the audience is digging it. They like it. Like, comment, and subscribe. We will see you again next Tuesday. Kristian will be back with more legal topics. Yes, and he is awesome. That is right. Steve, Kristian, thank you guys so much for joining us. Let me get the play out music. Hold on. There we go. We get the funk casino.